Ladies and gentlemen, I sold out. Yep, that's right. Popular thing in the last year or so on YouTube has been martial arts ranked. It's actually been popular since the dawn of time. We've always wanted to know which martial arts the best, who could beat who. That's why things like UFC, Veil Tudo, and other things exist after all. And it was really decided it's not so much the art, but the artist, and their ability to adapt, train properly, and overcome. So, in this episode, you get to see my biases. So, welcome to episode 18 of the Adroit Dojo podcast. My name is Andy. The criteria I'll be going over is the functionality / effectiveness of the art, the number of disciplines it has, meaning things like striking, clinch, throwing, submissions, ground game, and modern weapons, which, to clarify, I mean things like knife fighting, improvised weapons, and firearms. And then, how is the internal politics and bullshit? Does it get stuck in its own tradition and ceremonies, or is it able to grow and advance as a martial art as time keeps on marching? How is it taught? Some of the best martial arts can turn to shit from a bad teacher. Some of the worst ones can become really good with a good teacher. So we're going to look at the average method of how it's taught and how students are produced. And finally, adaptability. So how adaptive is it versus one person, multiple people? Is it effective if that person has a gun, etc.? So this is a tier list. Up at the top it's S, and then goes A, B, C, D, and then F. So pretty similar to the American grading system with the addition of S. I mean, you've seen so many of these tier systems, you're used to it. It's not in any particular order. I basically just went on blackbelt.com, Wikipedia, and just made a list of the martial arts I was at least somewhat familiar with. I had to look up a few, and some of these I'm not really familiar with at all, like the Emerson combat systems. I know next to nothing about it. So where I placed it could be totally wrong, along with some others. And that's okay, because in the end of the day, these tier lists are pretty bullshit anyway, so it doesn't matter. As like I said, as long as you have a good teacher and are adaptable in making your martial art work, you can make the most useless fucking shit into something that works well enough. Alright, so without further ado, tier F, starting with Systema. Yep, we've all seen it. It's the joke of the martial arts system. I don't have to explain it. Shit's trash. I don't even know why it gets publicity other than we get something to laugh at. Like, it's so bad, even kung fu people can finally look down on a martial art. Which brings me to wushu. Shit's fucking trash. Useless. It's good for exercise. It's good if you want to learn how to dance. But as a martial art, which is the criteria, it's fucking trash. Aikido. Could have been good, but it's trash. If you were to fix it up, simplify it, get rid of the crap that doesn't work, it'd be good. Like, I actually use like 2 things of Aiki in my training. But the rest, 99% of the shit, nope. Anyway, next, Tai Chi. Trash. Actually, I mentioned in my last video, there's a Chinese Sando guy who beats up Tai Chi masters. It's great. Oh, watching them get wrecked is fun. I don't even know why it's considered a martial art. Really, it's just, at this point, just meditation with movement. Baji Quan, trash. Wing Chun, trash. Shuai Zhao, trash. Oh, by the way, I'm going to mispronounce all of these. If you want me to pronounce Chinese correctly, you should spell it in a way that it's phonetically spelt how it should be pronounced. But no, you guys want to fuck with shit. Alright. Finally, in the F tier is Gagu Zhang. Whatever the fuck. I don't know. It's trash. Alright. D tier. Something that could actually work. Usually, again, someone who's untrained, maybe drunk. Starting off with, we have Taekwondo. Taekwondo, with the right teacher and some modernization, man, it could be good again. Especially if you start incorporating like all the techniques that are listed in the art, not just the kicks. Could be good. But it's subject to its own political bullshit, and it's fucking trash. Capoeira. It's a pretty good system, but it's taught fucking stupidly. It's one of those where it's been hidden in the dance so long that most people don't know how to remove the dance when they're training for effectiveness. And it's an art that uses weapons. A lot of the movements you do, if you had a machete, you'd be like, oh, this makes way more sense. Yeah, that's why there's not really any blocks in capoeira, because it's for knife fighting, machete fighting, things like that. But it's trained stupidly, therefore it's D tier. I love you, capoeira, but fix yourself. Next up is all the Kendo, Kyudo, the Japanese weapon systems falling under Do. Against an unarmed opponent, you're going to win every time. Hopefully every time. But against like jutsu, weapon styles, or HEMA, almost all the time you're going to lose. That's the difference between functional training and sport training. It's just sport always gets watered down. Next up is Shaolin. It's better than the other kung fus, but it's still pretty trash. It's a lot. Had so much potential, but fails. Now, Krav Maga is the last one in the D tier, and this is a complicated one. Spoiler, I also have it in S tier. So it's both S and D. The reason for this is because fundamentally, the techniques are effective. It includes a lot of disciplines: striking, clinch, throws, groundwork, weapons, and it's very adaptable. But it's how it's taught. My initial exposure to Krav Maga was nothing but positive. Like, they were sparring hard. They would do scenarios, which is I'm huge about if you listen to one of my previous podcasts. So they did a lot of scenario training, a lot of simplified techniques, just, down and dirty, get it done, and things like that. It was great. It was beautiful. I was like, fuck yeah, this shit's awesome. And then more videos came out with shit fucking instructors teaching shit that'll just get your ass either beat up or killed. So fundamentally, Krav Maga's there, but unfortunately how it's taught drops it down to D tier. So that's why it's simultaneously S tier and D tier. So if you find a really good instructor who knows what he's doing, yeah, it's one of the best. It'll be S tier. But for the most part, whatever Krav Maga is in your city is probably D tier. Alright, now C tier. Starting with, we have karate. Because this, for my list, is kind of the gatekeeper martial art. To be B and up, in my mind, you would have to be a karate 2nd or 3rd degree black belt. So everything else in C and anything lower than C, you're probably not going to beat the karate guy. And I simplified all karate martial arts just under karate. A lot of the karate systems, the differences are really pedantic. Like, it just doesn't fucking matter. I think they got too hung up on what works for person A versus person B, and they're like, oh, well, because I'm this body type and I have this fighting style, I'm going to create a whole different art that's 99.9% the same. But it just, dude, doesn't matter. Like, that's what's great about boxing is they recognize there's in-fighters, out-fighters, people who like to clinch. And that's something karate really fucked up on, is they can't recognize people just have fundamentally different fighting styles, personalities, body types. So they can't just incorporate that in their art. No, they have to make all these little splinter schools. So it's stupid, so it's just one category here. Alright, rant over. Next up is Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Unfortunately, a lot of it doesn't work too well. A lot of it's outdated or specifically set up to fight against someone with a katana. Those days are over. It needs to be modernized. That's where judo comes in and Brazilian jits. So jiu-jitsu is C tier. Now, probably the second highest kung fu on the list is Choi Li Foot. From what I've seen, which is very little, I know almost nothing about this, it has the potential to be effective, but again, it's kind of in the tier range of karate, where you might see some good standout performers, but for the most part, it's just meh. Tang Soo Do, kind of in that same category where it's just McMap has decent effectiveness. It covers striking, throws, clinch, blah blah blah. Unfortunately, it's just how it's taught is subpar from everything I've seen, so it just kind of falls under But it makes sense. I mean, Marines, your primary weapon is your rifle, not fisticuffs. Alright, next up is B tier, where most of the arts are. And it makes sense because if karate is the gatekeeper, everything above is able to beat karate. So you have all the traditional, well, not all the traditional, but all the standard sport martial arts that are still popular, still effective. So to start off with, we have boxing. It's great, tried and true. It's a martial art that is adaptable, flexible, stays true to what it is, but it's always evolving. People are always making it better. Next up is kickboxing, and this covers most categories of kickboxing, like Dutch kickboxing, American kickboxing, whatever. They're all similar enough. And then we have Greco-Roman wrestling, which is really good. And then we have catch, freestyle, collegiate, Senegalese, the Indian Mullah, Yuda, I don't know how to pronounce that, and Judo. They're all good. So all these wrestling, and pancration, sorry, it's all listed separately here. So all those wrestling arts, they've all proven themselves. They're all good. And if you look at them all, they're all pretty similar too. So all B tier, all solid. Next up is Japanese weapon jutsu, such as kinjutsu. That's all I can think of at this moment. It's B tier. If you go up against another weapon system, for the most part, you're probably going to beat it. I'm sure Filipino martial artists will be like raging at this. Hey, maybe you're S tier. Don't get so angry. Actually, no, I don't know enough about Filipino martial arts to list you. Sorry. Next up is Hapkido. Hapkido is one of those that might be D tier in actuality. It's just my exposure to it has always been really positive. It always seems real functional. From what I've seen, they actually pressure test techniques. The Aiki I've seen in Hapkido actually works. Like, they actually do what I suggested. They just simplify it, and it works. Their striking is okay. It's basically on par with karate, but because they have just more things in it. Savant, which should have just been under the umbrella of kickboxing. They're all pretty similar. Same with Sanda, which is the highest ranking kung fu on the list. It's proven itself. It's pretty much the same as all the other kickboxing arts, which is to say, it's effective. It's good martial art to learn. And finally, Kudo. Kudo is one where I had a hard time placing it, because it's basically karate, but modernized and made better. You have things like elbows, knees, headbutts. It has judo in it, and they seem to have tied the two in to each other pretty flawlessly. Like the tournaments and sparring I've seen, they go from striking to throws pretty seamlessly. It's really good. But my issue is, Kyokushin just kind of sucks. It lacks kinetic linking. So, I would take a punch from Kyokushin over boxing any day, because it just lacks that full body movement into their hits. So if Kyokushin just modernized, and if Kudo moved away from the ineffective techniques and learned from boxing and kickboxing to really use the whole body in their techniques, I would put Kudo in A tier. So who knows, maybe it'll keep evolving and get there one day. And speaking of A tier, we have Lethwei, obviously, Muay Thai, obviously, MMA, which some would argue, oh, that's not a style. But when you look at my S tier stuff, it's pretty similar to the concepts of MMA. So is Kudo and Sambo, which is basically you just take several styles and make it your own. So MMA stands for mixed martial arts, but in reality, it's just 4 martial arts that is taught in every MMA gym. So saying it's not a martial art at this point is probably being pedantic. Because when you say, I learn MMA, you know exactly like what techniques they're learning. So moving on, Brazilian Jits, that's obviously A tier. I mean, at this point in time, ground game wise, it's S tier. But because it's pretty purely ground game, it peaks at A rank. And then finally, HEMA. Hey, congratulations, HEMA guys. You outranked the Japanese weapon arts. Alright, we have reached S tier. Let's see what's going on. As I mentioned earlier, Krav Maga made the list. I know so many of you are going to be pissed. Oh, Krav Maga sucks. That's fucking trash. That don't spar. Again, my early exposure to Krav Maga was them pressure testing the fuck out of the art and themselves, using hard sparring with or without pads, using scenario training, multiple opponents, etc. So those schools are fucking S tier, man. No doubt about it. Next up is the KC system, KEYSI. Yeah, it's a very modern take on martial arts. It's very slimmed down. It's kind of... Why am I describing it? Just go look it up. And next up is Defense Lab, which, from what I can tell, is basically the KC system as well. Both are co-founded by the same guy. Andy, I forget his last name. But from what I've seen, they are both super solid systems. In fact, one of their shield blocks I really liked and added that to my system. So, thanks, Andy. Alright, next up, Emerson Combat Systems. This is one of those that I put as S tier, but maybe it's C tier, maybe it's D tier. I can't find much information about it. I found some videos of him where he's instructing, but it's just him and the camera. I can't find any videos of anyone using this system sparring or anything else. So On paper, it seems like an S tier system. It seems up there with good Krav Maga, good KC, and other similar hybrid modernized martial arts. But who knows? Maybe it's terrible. Next up is Kapat. It's Israeli. It's pretty similar to Krav Maga. So in this regard, it could be S tier, it could be D tier. Fundamentally, the techniques are pretty similar to the others' S tier systems. And then finally, my system, Adroit slash Kyonoshinka, which is fundamentally pretty similar to all the other S and A tiers. So all the S tiers, they address weapons, especially knife and firearm. They have ground fighting, they have submissions, they have throws, clinch work, striking. And so, obviously, you can see my subjectivity in grading these. Just like everyone else, we're all subjective. We all think our art is pretty good. And even my criteria is established based on what I think is important in a martial art. And so, that affects everything else. So tell me what you think. I know I missed many martial arts, such as the Filipino systems. So drop links to information on them. And this has been Andy with the Adroit Dojo podcast.